Chameleons sometimes get a bad rap for being difficult to care for, and in some cases, that's true. But there are 5 chameleon species that are excellent pets, and I'm going to tell you the best ones. My name's Adam, this is Hagatha. You're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles. Stick around. Starting off with number 5, this is a brevicorn, or as you'd probably see it in the hobby, this is an elephant ear chameleon. Not the same one that used to be imported as the elephant ear chameleon in the 60s. That is actually a Miller's chameleon. This one here is a true elephant ear chameleon, and they call them that because they have these elephant-like ears. So they'll actually start to flap them when they get upset, which might be any second now, because there she goes, just like that. She starts to flap them, letting you know, hey, I'm a big scary thing, do not try to eat me. And of course, if you did eat her, you'd also have an omelet, because inside of her, we've got a ton of eggs. She is absolutely loaded. This is actually a fantastic chameleon to have in captivity, although they're not cheap, they're not easy to find, they're actually kind of expensive, and they're very rare as well. The reason that you'd like them though, is because it is very easy to take care of them. That's because their care requirements aren't that difficult at all. And the size. Now we all know what a Panther Chameleon, a veiled chameleon looks like. It'd be taking up almost half my arm here, and certainly a Parsons Chameleon being even bigger than that. These guys are a similar size to a Carpet Chameleon, which is gonna make the list too, maybe. I don't know, you'll have to stick around and maybe hit subscribe. Either way, these guys are a fantastic species if you can get your hands on one, and that's why they're number 5, although if they become more plentiful, they might be closer to the top. I can't do a video about the best chameleons without talking about Panther Chameleons. Now these might be the best chameleons in the hobby for newer keepers. Not saying that you go out and buy one at PetSmart because you were there for dog food. Definitely do not do that. But these guys have a wide range. These guys can be found at sea level, or they can be found up to 1,000 meters above sea level. So they have a broad range, and because they are locales, they're technically all the same species. So in the hobby, we've been keeping them basically the same. The ones you find way above, and the ones that you find right at sea level like we are right now. Now they all have different colorations, and something that's interesting to note is that their fired up coloration is actually an excitement type, maybe even some would say a stress type of coloration. So when you buy one, when you see one on a breeder website and they look like this, very red, very fired up, that's because they're a little bit stressed. Now, of course, you want your chameleon to look almost drab, because that means that they're calm, that means that they're happy, and they don't have stress. These guys need a little bit bigger of an enclosure than things like the Carpet Chameleons, but at the end of the day, I really do think maybe the most beautiful chameleon could possibly be the best one too, and this information is approved by the Chameleon Academy. All right. Coming in at number 3, we're talking about Parsons Chameleons, which are the largest chameleon species in the entire world. Now, not only are they big, they're beautiful, and they've got this beautiful crest on the top of their head. The eyes move independently, just like all chameleons, and this is a yellow-lipped chameleon. Now, what you'll notice too, maybe not the best chameleon for handling. They have a great personality. They're not the most difficult thing to keep in the world. The reason I say they're not the greatest for handling for some people is because they've got these massive, massive feet. They kind of grip you, kind of like a lobster would, where it's on either side, just like most chameleons, but they've got these kind of appendages or almost talons for nails. And when they grab a hold of you, they leave pinpricks all over you. I compared it before, kind of like the way a monkey tail skink grabs a hold of you, and no matter how gentle they are, they're gonna leave marks on you. Same thing with this guy here. This guy has a little bit of issues, or not issues, but markings on his mouth. In captivity, obviously, you're not gonna have this issue because you're not going to keep these guys together. Please don't keep your Parsons Chameleons together. Bill Strand is applauding behind me. I recommend that you go ahead and watch his podcast right here. Now, of course, the tail is gonna be prehensile, and you've got this big giant body, big giant crest, independent moving eyes, and it flicks its tongue out just like you've seen in the movies. This is an excellent pet, but there's 2 more that I think might be better. Coming in at number 2, we've got a micro chameleon. Now this is a Superciliaris, so part of the Brochysia family, genus. Brochysia genus. Now they're really tiny chameleons. They're only going to get about this big. And if you remember from the Snake Discovery build-off, we had Mr. Bill Strand over here, and he made an enclosure for this species, is that right?
That is correct.
So if you wanted to have these, you could have it in a 4x2x2. I think you could probably keep it in a smaller enclosure than that. But of course, do your research. This is not a care guide. This is these things are cool, and do your research. Now the reason that I think these are so cool is because they're not like any other chameleon, in that they are so tiny. Full-size male male here. They've got these kind of horns on top of their head, which I think are to attract the babes, as Bill would say. But just for you and I, they look really cool. Now, their eyes do move independently. They have the lobster claw type feet, and they do have that prehensile tail. So everything that is a chameleon, but in a much smaller size. Not for everybody, but I do think that if you can take care of a chameleon, really do your research, put in the effort to learn all about them, and you have a smaller footprint, that's what you have available for you for a pet chameleon, don't get a Parsons, get a Brachysia. So, number 2, Brachysia. I'm gonna put this guy back exactly where I found him. Number 1, the best chameleon in my opinion are captive bred carpet chameleons. Now, obviously this carpet chameleon is not captive bred. We found it literally on the side of the road. We're driving down the road, all of us need to stop to take a little tinkle, and this one, she's dry, but she almost wasn't. She was just right there on the side of the road in these thorny bushes, and I think that's a testament to how easy it is to care for these guys, because we've found carpet chameleons all over Madagascar where we are right now. We found them in the south, we found them in the west, we found them pretty much everywhere, where it's humid, where it's dry. So as long as you're giving them little micro habitats inside of their habitat, so you give them opportunities to be drier, you give them opportunities to be a little bit more moist or humid, then I think you're gonna be a-okay. Now, of course, this is not a care guide. You're gonna wanna go have a conversation with a Bill Strand or watch a podcast to know more about these animals. But the reason that I think that they're number 1 and they're better than all the rest is because of their size. So you can give them a really big enclosure and it's still not a minimum size enclosure, it's the optimal space, which is something that I really love. I love giving opportunities for these animals to move around more than the PetSmart employee would often advise you. Carpet chameleons stay about this size, they don't get too much bigger, they're easy to breed, they're fun to feed, they're one of the most beautifully colored animals, and if you get a male and a female, they look like different species because they are so different. And because of the ease of care, as long as they're in captivity, they're gonna live a very long time, or as long as a chameleon will live in your care, as long as you take a little bit of precaution. These are my favorite chameleons. I think these are gonna blow up next year. Carpet chameleons are number 1, the best chameleon on the list. That's it. Those are the top 5 best chameleons in captivity. And I wanna say a special thanks to Bill Strand of the Chameleon Academy, who taught me everything I know right before I said it for the camera. Bill, if there's one thing that people might not know from watching this video, what would it be about chameleons?
Well, we've been talking about chameleons as pets. And I just want to say that when we talk about species of chameleons as pets and which ones are good, which ones are not so good, what's really important is that it's the captive hatched or captive born chameleons that make the good pets. Getting them from the wild, even though they, like Parsons Chameleon, they've got great personalities. But when you get them from the wild, there's so much acclimation that needs to be done that avoid it. Go for the captive hatched and be willing to pay the extra for the captive hatched because it is so worth it. And so that would be the most important thing, I would say, if you're thinking about getting a chameleon as a pet.
I would absolutely agree. That goes for most things, but especially chameleons being much less fragile if they're hatched in captivity. So I want to say thanks, everyone who hit like, subscribe. I'm going to leave Bill's channel in the link below. Amazing podcast. If you love chameleons, you got to check it out. And a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. For as little as $1 a month, you get early access. We're going to do a little bit of a Patreon only thing right after this. And you get to see pictures of all sorts of things right here from Africa, Madagascar, for as little as $1 a month. And that's it. Because I do videos on Mondays and Thursdays, that means I'll see you in the next one.